And I asked some friends that worked in the plants. They were engineers designing cars and stuff like that. And I asked them, I said, why won't they make fuel efficient cars? She said, they don't want to retool the factories. And I said, why not? They don't want to spend the money. I was like, we in trouble. And that was when I started making plans to get out of Detroit, because I was like, I'm not working in any factory. And it looked like it's going to go down in a disaster over here. Because that's, it was like you said, it was the force. It was the thing that made Detroit, the car industry, Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, all those companies, even Nissan and all those people had moved to Michigan.
Right.
And I knew if those industries went out, everybody else's industry would just crumble too. So it did happen. And like I said, I made my way to, out of New York. I went to Atlanta to school. And I ended up coming to New York like a year later because I wanted to be in the fashion industry.
So did you study in Atlanta the fashion part of it?
Yes. I went to the Art Institute of Atlanta, and I was horrible at school because all I wanted to do was sew and make clothes. I wasn't interested in the history of it. I was interested in the garment. I was interested in the making of it.
Right.
So I met a guy, and I came to New York for the first time in like 1978, in August of 1978, and went to the Paradise Garage, and that changed my life. It was the grand opening.
So you went, did you get the job first to come to New York, or did you just come to New York, then look for the job?
I came to New York and I looked for the job afterwards.
Okay. So
when
then
I first came to New York.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then describe the beginnings of coming up from Atlanta and you come to New York. Who invites you? What happened? All that wonderful stuff.
I came in a car alone with like maybe 4 or 5 people. We came here for the weekend to go to the opening of the garage. I don't remember ever sleeping. We came up here, and I remember we went to this guy's house with one of my friends and Pierre, and we went to this guy's house. His name was Andy. And I was looking, I was like, ooh, who is that? And I couldn't take my eyes off of him. But I didn't get to meet him that day, really. I was at his house, but I didn't say anything. And anyway, long story short, we came up here, we went to the garage, and that was really a lot of fun. And I never went to sleep. And I had never been to no place like that before.
That's what I was going to ask you. So can you describe, do you remember what it was like going in for the first time?
It was dudes in there. They had rolled up T-shirts, and there was sawdust on the floor, but the music was ridiculous. It was incredible. I remember we had brought this guy with us. He was a cheerleader or something like that. And we couldn't find him by the end of the night. When we did find him, he had his underwear on top of his head. It was like, ooh, what did he take up in there? But what did he get? Because we didn't get none of that. But anyway, so I went back to Atlanta, and I heard that this guy was coming down there to visit. And I was like, ooh, I want to know him.
Oh, the guy that you saw at the garage?
Yes. The one that we went to his house. Because I don't even remember seeing him in the garage the whole night. After him and my friend was dressed up, I never. And next thing, I to visit New York, and this other guy was coming to visit New York, who I had met also when I was here. And I was like, he when might come to my house or whatever. I want to meet him. He's cute.
Right.
Andy. And I became boyfriends.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed 3 months in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
And I wanted to come to New York. I wanted to come here since I was like a teenager. I wanted to go to the High School of Fashion. And you're not going to New York. I don't trust it. And, there was a whole lot of other things on that my father knew that I did not know. And so I here in 1978, I think it was like November. And I was staying with my first boyfriend's family, and his mother and I, at first we got along, but we didn't get along.
At that,
I'm not even going to tell that story. It's too...
So at that time, did your mom and dad know that you were gay at that point, or no?
Not at all. Not at all.
Because you got to explain that.
I think gone home.
You got to explain that because
like Thanksgiving.
During that era, you have to explain how it was still very, it wasn't like it is now where it's more comfortable and socially acceptable. It was people keeping it very hush in those days.
Oh, yeah, I was very quiet about it. I didn't want anybody to know. In fact, I was kind of embarrassed that I felt that way and couldn't change it. So anyway, once I was home, I think it was it was Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that. And me and my oldest niece used to always look at the boys across the street. And we're looking out the window and say, ooh, look at Delbert. Ooh, he's fine. And my youngest one said to me, oh, Uncle Freddy, you gay? You like boys? And I was like, yeah. And she says, oh, I'm going to tell Granny. I was like, do me the favor. Go right ahead.
Hey, get it out.
And she told my mother. And my mother said, Freddy, come downstairs. Sean said, yeah. She said, how is that? I was like, that guy that's calling over, all looking for me all over town. That's my boyfriend. And she was like, oh, you'll grow out of it. I was like, no, I won't. It'll never happen. So,
they thought you were
but they accepted me. They accepted me. That's what she said. She thought I was going to grow out of it. And my brother tried to take, like him and my father was responsible for, like, it was because of them. I was like, it has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you at all. So don't give yourself any credit to have nothing to do with you. So me being me is me. But, I had started sewing like when I was like 11 years old, and anything that I saw that I wanted, I would try to make it mine. And I had a lot of customers and stuff like that, and my own stereo equipment and stuff like that. My father bought me a Philips turntable and AVC. It was like equalizer, like a 5-band equalizer, receiver, and I had acoustic research speakers, and I bought like what is it called?
What would that?
Audio Technica, the V15, the top of the edge of cartridges.
Okay.
And the first record I bought for that, I had bought records of that stereo. I bought Bob James 1.
Ooh.
And because I knew that if I got my father into it, that he wouldn't complain when I played other music that he didn't like. So I would play that. He loved it. He loved it. Then one day I dropped the speaker from the ceiling in the kitchen. And I was getting ready to go and wash dishes. And my father would be, what's going on in here? I was even trying to do electronics when I was a kid. I loved it. I would telephone and take it apart and make speakers out of it, headphones and all kind of crazy stuff. Sure. The only part I could was the vocal part of the microphone part.
Okay.
But I would take the phone apart and do all crazy stuff. Mm-hmm.
So when do you get your first big job in New York in fashion? Because I know it's for DJ.
I went to stay with my cousin. Yeah, when I went to stay with my cousins in Brooklyn, my cousin knew some people from her church because I didn't know anybody in the fashion industry here. And she found out there were some girls or something that needed a tailor, a sample maker. And they were like across the street from FIT. So I went there. It was like a conglomerate or something, like 4 or 5 girls, 4 girls and a guy. And I went to sew them, and they had clients like Eveyline Champagne King and Phyllis Hyman, and I sold for them. Wow. And they did a fashion show one time, and Phyllis Hyman came and performed, and that was my, I would say one of my first time, well, not first time, but because I knew other performers or artists from Detroit, because my sisters and them used to have a lot of cabarets, and
Right.
they would have like uh what's his face? Al Hudson and the Soul Partners. I don't know why I'm stumbling today. I guess I'm nervous.
Oh,
Al Hudson and the Soul Partners, and Alicia Myers and stuff like that. And so I was already introduced to, people like that, or, artists. And so they were like normal people to me, because everybody was like that in Detroit. It was normal.
Right, because you're around
But anyway, they had Eveyline. Yeah, I was around it all my life. So it was like, ooh, another one. Ooh, she can sing better than the other one, okay? Or she don't sing as well as the other one or whatever. So, and my sisters, in fact, when the Supremes came out, my sister, Peanut and Maggie, when this girl named Star, they were the group, and they were doing pretty well. And my father didn't want them to go on. So he didn't want them to go on the road. So they had to stop that group. But around when they were around, when Diana Ross and the Supremes, were getting started, so was my sisters. I don't remember what they called the group, but they were singing too.
Oh, really? Oh,
but
okay.
My father wasn't having anything to do here. Yeah. He wasn't having his girls going out there amongst all these guys or whatever. He didn't trust it at all. So
I don't blame him.
I worked for those girls in Manhattan. And there was a guy named Richard there, liking to me. And he's, oh, you can sew so well, and blah, 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 blah. And we became some of the best of friends. He was way older than me, maybe 10, 15 years older than me.
Okay.
We became the best of friends. And I met what's her face at his house, Sharon Red at his house, and all these other people. Like I said, it was always somebody that you was meeting. Because everybody was involved in it. It was like a lifestyle. And I remember meeting like some friends that what was that show on Broadway? Cats. I think it was Cats or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They were in that Broadway show, and I got to meet Gregory Hines. I went to his house and all these people. You meet all these different stars and stuff like that. And it's like in fact, some people, until I'm talking now, I don't even remember how I met them, because I met so many people.
Sure.
And then anyway, after working for those girls, I found a job, because that was like here and there. I was working for those girls. They didn't have enough work for me, and I needed a steady job. So job working for Pierre Cardin.
Oh, wow.
Stoutwear. Yes, that was my first real job, was for Pierre Cardin. And it was here in Queens, where I live at, and I didn't.
I'm shocked. Wait a minute. Wait, he had an office in Queens?
Yeah. Yep.
Where?
Yep.
Where was he?
I live in Long Island City. Long Island City is very close to Manhattan, so I guess they don't want to pay all that rent. They'll have a showroom in Manhattan, but they'll have the sample room somewhere else.
Wow.
That wasn't particular. That was for him. So anyway, I like being in the crowd. I like being around people. So I got fired from that job, and I got me a job in Manhattan, because I would leave that job and go on the train.
Did you say you were fired?
It was boring.
What happened? What'd you do?
My boyfriend threw me shade and left me by myself. And I was crying every night and couldn't go to work.
Oh my God.
And I wanted to be around people. I didn't like that going around the corner to work and all that kind of crap. It's boring. So I got a job in Manhattan, and I worked for many designers.
So who was the biggest designer? Who was the biggest designer that you worked with, and really was an impact in some of the stuff that you worked on at that time?
I worked with Isaac Mizrahi. I worked with Donna Karen Badgley and Mitchka. I worked for Dee Dominic. I worked for Stephen Barrels. I worked for, I can't even remember this guy's name. Frank Composto. I worked for so many designers. Janet. I can't even tell you. There was hundreds of jobs because sometimes they would hire you in and they would let you go. And some jobs, like I worked for this company called Bernard Charles, and he had every store you had to buy, and he had like 7 sections in every store because he did sportswear, dresses, blouses, activewear, um, petite. They had everything. And
were you finding yourself more doing the women's clothing or the men's clothing for the designers, as far as cut and stuff?
mostly women's clothes.
Mostly women.
Women's clothes. Mm-hmm. And Bernard Chalice was a big, huge, giant company. They were on the stock market.
Oh,
They
wow.
were so huge. They had their own. I don't know what they call it, but they paid good money, and it was hundreds of employees.
Okay, so
we were on 8th Avenue between 36 and 37.
That company's, they call that when the company goes public, when it's on the stock market. When this is all going on, are you record shopping and becoming the DJ that we all got to know? When is this all happening? While you're
I was going to the garage, and in the industry, there was a store called Rock and Soul on 7th Avenue. And I would go there daily. I would go there for lunchtime, and I would go there after work. I went there so much that people thought I worked there. Every box that came into the store, I was able to open it up and play every record in the store. Most of the time, they wouldn't even let people play their own. They let me play the records because they knew that I was going to sell them also. I sold the records. They would open up a box of 25 records and they'd be gone in 2 seconds flat because I was up there playing the records and, checking them myself. I was a record junkie. Record junkie. Love music.
Beyond record junkie, you were a record, I can't even say collector.
Whore.
Anybody who knows Freddie knows he knew all the tunes. He turned everybody onto the tunes. So between going to work all day, he'd go then to rock and soul. Was Walter and them working there at that time, or was that before Walter came?
Walter worked here, Benji Turner, Benji Candelario worked here. This guy named Stewart. Then Danny Buddha worked in there. All these guys they were like teenagers working in there. In fact, Danny Buddha tells me the story. He says, "Oh, if it wasn't for you and Benji, I would be playing crap because y'all would teach me what records were bad and all of this stuff like that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it's to meet people today that say to me, "Oh, I thought you worked in Downtown Records. Oh, I thought you worked in Disco Rama. I thought you worked in all." I was a junkie and I was in every store that there was because I wanted to have all the things.
What did we call Disco Rama? What was the name we called it? We had a nickname for Disco
Drama.
Disco drama, everyone.
Disco drama.
When you talk about somebody going record shopping, one time we all the time. We'd be together, like going crazy, going to record labels. It was wild back then. So go ahead.
All the record labels. I got to meet so many people all the time. In fact, when I was going to the garage, I sold for Russell Patterson
from Black Ivory
because he was a friend. He was the boy of one of my best friend's girlfriend. He's working at what's the name of that restaurant in
the restaurant?
Do you remember that restaurant that was in Central Park?
Yes, that was Tavern on the Green.
Tavern on the Green. He worked at Tavern on the Green, and that girl used to work there too. I can't remember her name, but I went to her with him one time, and I met Russell. And anyway, I ended up making clothes for him and one of the others that performed in the garage.
Oh, really?
And I met Michael Brody and all the people. Yeah. Yep. And it was weird too, because when Isaac, I don't know how I was hooked up, but I met Vito Bruno, and I went to his office for a meeting. You know, he wanted for Crystal Waters.
Hold on, wait 1 second.
And we went there.
Hang on. Everyone, Vito Bruno was the manager of Crystal Waters and Roman Ricardo, and he had a company called AMPM. And he also was the bouncer at Odyssey 2001 in Brooklyn, that disco club where Saturday Night Fever. He was all part of that. So go ahead, Freddie. So you met up with Vito Bruno.
So we go to his office and we show him some designs, and he says, we trying to negotiate, what we gonna make and how we gonna get paid. And he said, oh no, we're gonna do it for credit. I was like, not on my time doing nothing for credit, because I'm not a pattern maker, and I took the pattern maker with me so we could discuss how this was gonna come together.
Right.
Happened because he was trying to get something for free, and I was like, I don't need your credit, I need the money, because I got a lot of credit. My clothes are in every window in New York City. Okay, Bergdorf Goodman, Bloomingdale's, Henry Vendel, Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord Taylor, Henry B. Altman. Every window in New York, my stuff was in. And most of the time, I didn't even know, because it was the original sample that went in the window.
Oh, is that what happened?
Factory piece.
Is that what happened? They took the ones that worked on, and it went right in the glass.
They would take the sample and put them, because they were perfect. They wanted to be perfect. They want to be able for people to look at it really closely and see it be flawless. And I'm one of those kind of people. I may not make it flawless for myself, but on my job, it had to be perfect.
And I'm going to tell everyone, I've seen Freddie's
work. Doing that.
Freddie's work is absolutely stunning. I've seen his work, so I can't.
And now, honey,
he does fabulous. I just wish he had time for me. I ask him all the time to make me things. He says, I don't have time. Look what he made.
I'll never tell you that.
He makes these fabulous masks. Look at that.
Wonderful.
Okay. So Freddie does nice, beautiful work. So Freddie, I know.
Yeah.
So you go into the Paradise Garage, you go into Better Days, because I know you're going to dance with T. Scott and all of them, of course, and you're around
Better
all
Days,
the disco drama, Downstairs Records, rock and soul. Everybody knows Freddy Turner. Everybody knows you. Every record
Downstairs, Vinyl Mania, Satellite. I mean, that came later.
That's later.
All dance tracks.
High tech music. Remember high tech music?
Yeah. And then I think Johnny Dangerous had, not Johnny Dangerous, but Johnny Vicious had a record shop called Beyond the Bass.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was record shops around Christopher Street that I would go to just to see if they had something nobody, because I wanted to have all the tunes. When they was going to the garage and they was getting high, I was getting high on the music, a little bit of something, but I wanted to have something ironclad in my hand for my money.
Yeah, right.
I bought a lot of records. I have over 400,000 records.
So
my first record I ever bought.
I was gonna say, well, at that time, were you yet, before you even say the first record you bought, were you starting to think about DJing, or were you just collecting?
It's funny because I was just thinking the other day how somebody was saying about how they used to, Morales was saying how he would organize the records at his house or at a party and stuff like that, like in his family's house, he would put on the records like 45s or whatever. And I realized I was the same thing. Because I had a record player that the records dropped down on it. And she would have these Christmas, she would have the family parties in her house. She had no kids. So I would go and hear. And they would all fall down and play one after the other. And, and then the first player I had was a close and play.
Okay.
And it vibrated it so it shook so much that it fell off and broke on the floor.
Ooh.
And I cried.
You cried
because I bought one of the first records I Yeah, because I would, I wanted to play my records. I wanted music. I
Oh,
was really into it.
I
You
bet.
can't even talk to me when I'm listening to music.
I
'Cause
know
I
that.
don't
That's
hear
one
you.
thing.
I don't hear anything.
That's very true. You get zoned out when you're listening to a song, especially when you're feeling it. I know that about you. You lock right in. But when is this? So where does this? Okay, you're collecting,
Yeah.
you're working, you're making some nice coins in the fashion industry. You're doing all the best cuts for most of the design, for the designers and the artists, and all the stores are carrying all your wonderful, all the stuff that you're working for, and then becoming showcase pieces. When the hell did you become the DJ we all know? When does that start? I've been trying to wait for that moment. What
It's
is that?
funny because I had a roommate one time. I used to do that part. And, what's his face was talking about? DJ Spin was talking about pausing the cassette player. I learned the same trick, and everybody was. And then I had Benji Candelario that was editing tape, and he would call me up and ask me all these records that Tony Humphries was playing. Ooh, record, what's that record? What's that record? In 5 days, I would find that record. If it was an import, whatever, found that record. And in fact, it's funny because brother married this woman in Chicago, and his her last name was Turner. Weird that her last name was Turner before he even married her. But she was a cousin to Barney, a record distributor in Chicago. And when I went to Chicago, I went to that record distributor. I told you I was a junkie. And I got L&R, Working to the Bone. He let me buy anything I wanted to buy from there at wholesale price. And I brought like 10 copies of that back to New York.
Oh, wow.
They got that record here yet. Yeah. And I gave them out to my friends or whatever. And because it's like, ooh, this record is dope. Y'all got to hear this record. This record is the bomb, y'all. And many other records I brought back, but that was the record of that particular time. It was the best record of all of them. So yeah. But I love music. In fact, when I was working, I would have my headphones on with a mixed CD or mixed tape all day long while I was sewing. I would be listening to my music, and then at 12 o'clock, I wouldn't take lunch until 1 o'clock because I wanted to hear John Robinson. I wanted to hear what's that guy's name? What's the white guy's name?
Bobby Condors?
He used to play like a Jamaican.
Yeah,
Bobby Condors.
Bobby Condors, yes.
Yeah, Eddie Bone. All these people were playing on the radio at lunchtime. And I would leave my seat until they went off. In fact, John Robinson is so cool that you could call a radio station and ask him what record he was playing. And he would tell you, he would get on the phone and oh, I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And I went and closed records. And then I started meeting more people in the music industry and more people in the music industry and more people. And then one time I was riding the train. I was hanging out with David Lozada. And David Lozada had a friend came to visit him from Switzerland. And he says, oh, Freddie, will you do me a favor? Will you take care of him while I do something else? And I was like, oh. So it was this guy named Mark Newcomb. And we're riding the subway and I got my headphones on and I'm listening to my music, getting down on the subway because you can't stop from moving when you playing, good stuff or whatever. So he said, can I hear it? So I let him hear it. He's like, oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. You should be in Switzerland. And I was like, oh, okay. I paid it on. I was like, okay, whatever.
What do you mean?
Just talk,
he said that you should be in Switzerland. What are you thinking? What in your mind? He says you should be in Switzerland. What are you thinking?
Talk. It's just going to be talk. And, people always make promises to you or whatever. 3 months later, I got a call to go to Switzerland. Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night.
Oh, wow.
And that was the start of that. Mm-hmm. But I think did I go to England before that? I think I may have gone to England to visit the first time. Yeah. Music Mizrahi was the first time I went to visit England. Yeah. I went to visit England the first time was in 1990.
Now let's go on the timeline.
And
because before this, in the late 80s, you were already working on productions already in the studio.
yeah,
So come back.
It's funny because it was like it's funny because I was something, you know, mixing up something, brewing something on the turntables in my house. I was always recreating something because I heard other people do that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, I can do that too. I would put a different acapella on top of another. And then I had an idea. I had this Paul Simpson record called Musical Freedom. And I loved that record, but it had a lot of samples on it. And I was like, one time I had gone to Benji Candelario's house and he was playing a Candy State. I forgot the name of the group, but it was You Got the Love. And I said, oh, I like that at my house. And I mixed the two together. You Got the Love and Musical Freedom. And I put her vocal on top of it. It was perfect. So I was like, I need to edit it down so I can just get the instrumental parts and not all these samples because it had like a million samples on it. So I went to my friend's house. I swear to God, I feel so bad that I don't remember his name. He used to work for BLS. And I went to visit him and we put it on reel to reel.
Okay.
Recorded the record on reel to reel and edited so I could get the instrumental parts. And I played her vocal on top. On that day, I met Patrick Adams. Patrick Adams lived down the street. I think this guy lived in White Plains and Patrick Adams lived down the street from him.
Okay.
Not Patrick Adams, other guys. No, the guy that used to play at Better Days.
Oh, Bruce Forrest.
T. Scott lived down the street from him.
Scott? Okay.
Oh, T. Scott. T. Scott lived down the street from him. And I met T. Scott on that day. I don't think he ever remembered me, but I met him on that day. Anyway, long story short, I went and put that on an acetate and was playing it all over the place. And people were like, ooh, what's that? What's that? And it's funny because I played so many different parties and well, that it was just, it just happened. I wasn't looking for anything. It just happened. Okay. And anyway, long story short, they said, oh, Freddie, you should press that. You should press doing that. That's illegal. And so I said, let me try this. Because I used to see Paul Simpson at Rock and Soul. So I told Benji Turner, I was like, the next time you see Paul, give him my phone number and tell him I have an idea. So he finally called me and we went up to Chrysalis, which was at Time Warner building, Time Warner. And we went to see Peter Edge. And Peter Edge heard it and he's like, oh, that should have been done 2 weeks ago. That's a hit. And I was like, oh my God, wow. I thought it was a hit myself this is just dope. This is dope.
But when somebody tells you that, but when someone tells you like that, it just verifies you're right on, right?
Yeah. And it was funny because like at the store, like I said, people thought I worked there because I was selling records that were hits all, you know, at Rock and Soul and, you know, all the other stores except Vinyl Mania. You couldn't play records in there. So Peter Ed said, that should have been out 2 weeks ago. So we went to the studio and we recorded her vocal again from the acapella on top of it. And they added it, make it clean or whatever. And they put it out as a promo. And Paul had the idea, because I tried to call Canoff and I called all over the country, cost a fortune back then those days to make long distance phone calls. I'm calling all everywhere trying to find Candy State, and her husband says, no, she doesn't sing that kind of music anymore. So what do they call it? Like the devil's music.
Oh yeah, that's more concerned like worldly music. When you do music.
Yeah. So he says, he gets a diva and he has his girlfriend to write the song. So they rewrote the song, and I said, oh, how are you going to clear that? Because the record, the B side's got Candy Staten vocal on it. On the A side, it's got Adiva's vocal.
Right.
And he says, "Oh, I'm gonna," because I had the same lawyer. And I was like, okay. So anyway, the record came out. It went on the top of the pops to number 14.
Oh wow!
And I guess Candy Staten them found out about it, and they yanked it. I'm glad I got my money first. But they yanked it. And recording studio at that time, there was an incident there because there were two other people there, one from Cool Temple and one from another record label.
Okay.
And I was like, Paul, when we finish, you don't have my social security number or nothing like that. So how are you going to pay me? And some guy had to be on the record. And I was like, what? You should be glad to have your name on the record. I was like, this is an A and B conversation. See your way out of it. He wants to fight me. And I was like, okay, let's go. Let's do it. So anyway, long story short, that didn't happen. But it was so tacky. And I was so shocked. But, people think you stupid. It's like, oh, it's your first record or whatever. You just supposed to just give it up like a fool. It's like, it's not going to happen. Anyway, long story short, the record came out and it was really big. With the number 14.
Congratulations.
But Love Station got the Staten, and it became a huge, 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 huge hit. And I was infuriated. I was like, that could have been us. That could have been us. Played your cards right. Had you did this shit right, we could have been paid. Because that record was out in, I'm sorry to say, but the music was awful on the original. Her singing was God sent, but the music was awful. And anyway, yeah, the song was so dope, and it just touched me in such a way. I was like, wow, this song. I wasn't a real a Bible thumper or anything like that. I didn't really go to church a lot, but that song touched me. I was like, wow, oof. It was almost like you went to church when you heard that song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, it is too much. So
and you knew,
anyway,
you knew when you were doing that at that time, you knew it was big before it was even signed. You said, this would work, right?
Exactly.
This is going to work.
This is hot. Yep. And people had been hearing it, but I wouldn't give it to anybody. I had an acetate. I still have that acetate. But yeah. But it was so, it was so crazy for Paul. I was like, Paul, dude, you should do better than this, because I knew that when you take somebody else's stuff and you don't pay them for it, ain't nothing good going to happen for you.
Sure.
That's just not right. It's like somehow, some way you're going to pay, so I never tried to do that. So,
So right after that, I mean, I guess now people know, if they don't know you, now they know you have a record out and things are starting to pop, right? So when do you leave the fashion industry completely? Like, when is that, that transition?
In 1992, I left the fashion industry, but I was still doing sample with different designers and stuff like that in my house. I would, they give me a bunch of sample ever, and I would charge like $125 per sample. And instead of making it in 2-3 days overnight, so I would collect all this money until they started asking for social security numbers and all that kind of crazy stuff. And I was like, but this is a 3-day job that you're not paying me for. I'm doing it in my house with my equipment, my electricity, my space, my sewing machine, my iron, everything. I'm not giving you no social security number because you $400 for this sample. So I did that for a long time, though, until I got sick of them asking me for my social security number, And then I think I started going to San Francisco and places like that.
Right.
Yeah, I started going to San Francisco, I was playing for these kids through Frankie Feliciano. I was playing this place called Tilt, and then they had another party called Lift, and we would go there 2 weeks. Frankie would go there for 2 weeks, and then and we would do these parties. And then I met like all these other people. Like I met Pete Avila,
Peter
and he
Villa.
had me playing at Red Zone, and Pete Avila, and I played at Red Zone, and I played with him, and I played at 1015 Fosan, and I played at Rye, and the end up was the end up. The end up was on fire.
Yes,
many times. I loved them because you could really play anything you wanted in there, and they were really receptible, to whatever you were playing. They really enjoyed it. You could feel it in the room. It was fire in there.
right.
So, and then, then it's funny because like you could go to a record shop and you can meet anybody in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I met so many people in record shops. Like my first invitation to play in Germany, I met my friend Fabian Tank at Dance Tracks.
Right.
We're in Dance Tracks, and I'm collecting records, I'm buying records, and I'm like, this guy is like, he loved everything I picked. I would, because if people records is like, oh, check this out. I like this record. This record is dope.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have this record. You have to have this record. So I met him, and come to find out, he was like, what did he call himself? He was an artist himself, and he was involved in this group that they gave a lot of like that. And I introduced you to them. And anyway,
yes, I remember. Yes,
they brought me over to play. Yeah, they brought me over to play. They used to have parties at museums, and I did like MTV over there. I did TV awards. Then they would have club parties. I did a lot of parties with them. In Switzerland, I played a lot of places in Basel and in Zurich and Geneva and Lausanne. Everywhere. It's easy to try to remember all these things because all these things were going on at the same time.
yes.
And they weren't planned anyway. They just happened. Organically, they just happened.
But what music were they into? What was the music that they were into that you were playing to them? Because you're bringing New York flavor. So describe what you would be playing at that time. The musical stylings of house music, of course. But what was the most of your record collection at that time consisting of?
Where?
When you were traveling, like you said, you went over.
Because I bought all kind of records. Well, I know in Switzerland, some places, like if you played in the German part of Switzerland, they dance from the foot, not from the hip. And you played in the French part of Germany, they dance from the hip. And you could play, but the thing is in the French part, if you played in Geneva, it was completely different than when you played in Lausanne. If you played in Geneva,
mm-hmm.
I think they were more trance. So you had to play like a more poppy, more aggressive. And like in Lausanne, you can play like you was playing with because they loved it. I mean, like I felt like I was in Brooklyn with heels because it's weird. It was like I felt like I was in Brooklyn because there were so many different kinds of people all together.
Oh, wow.
It was really down to earth. In fact, yeah. Mandrex had a record shop there. The guy who had Liquid Groove, and they did the Billy record.
You talk about Stephen.
Ain't Nobody's Business. Stephen Mandrex. And I did a lot of radio shows there. I did like Couleur Trois, and I played with Mr. Mike and Jamie Lewis and countless people. And they're going off to Germany and playing all those places over there. It's crazy. Stuff happened. I can't even remember sometimes. Sometimes one story will lead into another story that leads into another story that open up another situation.
Yeah,
which I loved.
You became like the star of Switzerland for the Americans. Like you were the most I knew that was going at that time, playing a hell of a lot in Switzerland.
And the funny thing is that they had all these magazines and stuff over there. Like I can't even remember the name of them, but they would never talk about me or Americans in those magazines.
Oh,
They
really?
were always on the the DJs, even though we were the ones who were really playing and turning the places out, and like at the Mad and stuff like that in Lausanne. I mean, like that was a major club for them. Lausanne, they had like a membership to go to that club, and that club was huge. I
Wow.
remember one time I went to play there, and they had somebody else open up for me, and the owner came to me and she says, "Oh no, honey, we pay for you to play. We don't want to hear nobody else play. We want to hear you play." And I was like, "Okay."
All right.
We don't want to hear nobody else playing. We want to hear you play.